recycling, as an example, is not inherently sustainable. Caveat, because
Interesting.
it focuses on conversion. So
Hmm.
you can have recycling and have it be unsustainable.
In that context, yes, I do not think recycling will solve all the problems. We also have a consumption problem.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of The Circle in partnership with the Circular Economy Innovation Partnership, also for better known as CEIP. Now, having this program with CEIP is such a big deal because they have been leading the charge in reimagining how Nigeria handles waste resources and innovations, and they do this by bringing together government, businesses, and communities all to build a truly circular economy for Nigeria. Of course, you get to know more about them in case you don't already in the course of this program. And that's why we're launching this program, because the circular economy is about our everyday lives, from the plastic that's clogging our gutters, the food we throw away, and the clothes that are piling up in so many dumpsters. It's time for us to look at how we can rethink waste and unlock new industries, and of course transition to a future where nothing is left as waste. And in today's episode, we want to start at the very beginning, looking into what exactly circular economy is, why should the average Nigerian like you and I care about circular economy, and most importantly, where are we as a country on this journey? I'm joined by Opeyemi Orinowo, member of the advisory board at CEIP, and Bolu Aipola, also a part of the CEIP team. It's a pleasure to have you both join us today. I'll start with you, Bolu. How are you doing today?
I'm very well.
All right, so let's get right into it. We'll start at the very beginning. Like I said, this being our pilot episode, I want us to set more of a foundational tone. So I want to ask, first of all, for our audience, in simple everyday terms, what is the concept behind a circular economy? Why should we care about it? Why are we having this discussion? So just in everyday simple terms for the average Nigerian, can you break down the concept of a circular economy to us?
Oh, wow. It's not very easy to break down a
Mm.
complex topic. I'll do my best. And just before we go ahead, I'm actually with BSF, a chemicals company. I have a chemical engineering background, and I've
Okay.
worked to look for opportunities to grow the circular economy over the past years. Anyway, so I think the circular economy for me is one concept and several ideas, and I will quickly go through the first that humankind likes to pursue an improved quality of life, and this is something that we have done over the millennia, right? Second, that is that the way we pursue and achieve the improved quality of life means that we are interacting with the material environment around us. And then further is that there are implications for the way we build our quality of life on material environment. This means that now humankind has come to a point where um, we now have the potential to shift Earth systems one way or another. And so, for the purpose of this discussion, we think of that in terms of a set of what we call planetary boundaries that define the stability or otherwise of the Earth systems that sustain the resources that we use to achieve an improved quality of life. Now, why is that important? It's important because we've realized that the way we've produced and consumed resources have led to us pushing those planetary boundaries to a point where we could potentially destabilize these systems that sustain us. And so the circular economy as a concept was born from this realization as a means of separating that drive of humankind to continue to pursue increased quality of life from the continuous extraction of resources from the natural environment which sustains us, which means that we can then continue to grow and thrive and develop in a way that does not wipe out our home. So, and that has, of course, implications from our everyday life to businesses we run, to how we produce, how we manufacture, how we trade, and then, of course, global flows of materials. What the circular economy is, and some of the fundamental ideas. Now, of course, this is a broad concept that touches on several tangents. So it's not exhaustive, and I will say that importantly, you see that the intention is to push towards sustainability. So it's implicit that approach, the circular economy should be sustainable for the environment, for people, and of course for the economies that
You were successfully able to break that down for us, even though you said you were going to try. So at least a very good understanding, a better one. So let me come to Okpe now as well. I also want to get your thoughts on that as well. So just a bit. I mean, Bolu has said quite a lot, but we also want to hear from your perspective. Why should the average Nigerian, especially looking at the situation of most citizens of the country, especially when we talk about the economics of things, a lot of people are struggling, and we're talking, oh, secular economy, let's not do this way, let's do it in a more sustainable way. Everyone is really just trying to see something that they could eat to survive daily. So why should the average Nigerian care about secular economy? What difference would it make to their daily life if they decided to take cognizance of this?
Okay, thank you very much. And very well spoken, Bolu. I'm totally aligned around Bolu's remark on circular economy and how she sees a particular storytelling angle she's come to it. But I would just attempt to add and build on that, especially in the context of what you mentioned around struggling communities of people and making sense of it for them. Why it's important. Well, the idea, building on that same storytelling angle, is that we presently run a largely linear model, which is can be simplified as take, make, dispose, and this is under the assumption that what you're taking from is infinite. That means we assume that what you're taking to produce is going to be there, and we also are on the assumption that what you're disposing, the planet has the capacity to continuously, infinitely accommodate the waste that we're disposing. And now we're at a point whereby we know that we have an existential challenge. The resources are not finite, and also
Yeah.
we're also struggling with the impact of this endless waste catastrophe avalanche, both its impact on our planet, on the oceans, on the ozone layer. We know that the planet is at risk. So here comes circular economy as a potential silver bullet to address the challenge of finite resources and the existential challenges of a planet that is being threatened in such a sustainable way, right? So in a lot of instances right now, and I've always argued this, that sometimes in some communities across the world, the planet might be the biggest challenge to put forward. Yes, we see the impact of change, we see rivers drying up, we see the planet heating up. That might be the most significant argument that moves them in the room for that provides the imperative for the transition. But in some other climes like Nigeria or like Africa, where people are not still able to connect the dots, maybe due to literacy levels or what have you, sometimes the poverty becomes, or the opportunities that circular economy offers becomes the actual narrative that we're putting forward, right? Because for us, or for me, I say it's the potential that, like Bodo said, that we can potentially satisfy the people planet without compromising on profit, right? It's a model, it's a new way of doing things that offers a new approach, right? Where you're not compromising on people, you're not compromising on the planet, and ultimately you're doing it in a sustainable and profitable way. So that's the way I like to look at it. And the reality of it is, as of today, is that nobody has all the answers, right? We see some entrepreneurs or some enterprises exploring this approach. Some have been successful, some not so much, right? But what we're coming to see right now is that for any success to be achieved as far as circular economy is concerned, a lot of variables have to come into play because one, we're dealing with behavioral change. People, this way in which we believe the capitalism right now that has prevailed as an economic model across the world has reigned supreme for a very long period of time. So here comes circular economy. People need to start to think. So there's a first mindset shift that we first need to have. The endless tourism that we must consume, we must continuously have the definition of what good life is. We must continuously address these issues before it then seeps into our approach, in terms of how we manufacture, how we produce, how we consume, even the definition of what wealth is, what a rich person is. How do we look at that? So these are the principles we constantly look at. And it's also important that I add that, well, circular economy is not new to Africa or Nigeria, even if that term might be new, right? But over time, we've always, had a system why it might not have trickled into manufacturing, as Nigeria is still an industrializing climate that has not industrialized fully yet in terms of attaining full potential. But we've come households that have, some of us grew up reading the textbooks of our senior brothers. Some of us grew up in, using cookie jars, turning them into tailoring kits. Some of us grew up wearing clothes of ourselves. So there's always been that system. Sometimes this might have been motivated more from of no waste, of it's just bad to waste anything as a principle, as a
Yeah.
cultural principle. But now moving this now is how do we transition this into now a way of life, down to procurement, down to the opportunities, the green jobs, right? I think that for me, when I advance this conversation on this side of the climb, the southern side, right? I believe that is the conversations around unlocking new frontiers of opportunities for green jobs, for social entrepreneurship. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Okwe, for that. That was quite insightful. And you've already pointed out some different parts of the conversation that we want to go into. But before I go deeper into that, I want to bring you home to CEIP. I know CEIP has been very involved in this push for secular innovation in Nigeria. And you were also instrumental in the launch of the 2025 Circular Economy Roadmap. So, of course, you've been on the playing field in all of your engagements and dialogues and all the like. So I want to now describe, okay, what is the state of the circular economy in Nigeria today? You spoke a bit about, mindsets, there needs to be a mindset shift. So what really is, so I want you to just give us a broad description of what the circular economy is like currently in Nigeria. Where are we? Are we progressing? Are we regressing or retrogressing rather? What is the situation in Nigeria today in terms of the push for circular economy?
So over the last 2 years, Nigeria has made significant progress. At the inception, the Dutch government, through the embassy, was very much involved in partnering with the African Development Bank, together with the African Circular Economy Network, right? To look at, what are the opportunities that Africa needs, or what are the low-hanging fruits within the circular economy space that Africa needs to prioritize to move this transition from linear to circular economy. So we have supported that studies to look at, and how to move the conversation forward. But building on that is then the subsequent work we did in 2023 together with the European Union Commission for Nigeria and ECOWAS, where we supported Nigeria or supported the Federal Ministry of the Environment to develop a circular economy roadmap, just like you mentioned. The idea at the time was to bring together stakeholders from multi-sectoral stakeholders together with the private sector to look at and highlight what the key opportunities are, right? For us, we believe that entrepreneurship or the private sector must lead the transition. For the transition to be successful, beyond this whole narrative of policy or this is good to have, is the fact that there must be, we must be able to show right now that it is sustainable and it is bankable and it is profitable. If it means that we need to retweak the financial system so much so that it's able to accommodate the patience required for social entrepreneurship or for secular enterprises, so be it, right? Those are the kind of institutional changes and reforms we'd like to see. So the idea of the document, the circular economy roadmap, is to provide a kind of document, a framework that guides priority areas, strategic partners, key stakeholders, both in the public, private, and the social sectors that are important, that are critical to moving the transition forward. So, and that roadmap identified, I think, about 5 to 7 opportunity areas, from e-waste to waste to energy to recycling to plastics, just looking at where the opportunities are, moving from seeing the problem to now looking at how do we turn this problem into an opportunity. So yes, we do have a document. Nigeria does have a document that provides a roadmap for the transition. But beyond this document, of course, we have so many beautiful documents in Nigeria. Where the real work now is how do we translate this roadmap into policies and also into actual progress on the ground. And I would say, it's like it takes a village, right? No one institution can do it. While the government, we continue to push the government right now on the need for important policies such as the EPR, procurement laws, in terms of the importance. In fact, if there is any sector that we know for sure, there is nowhere in the world where secular enterprise, the secular economy has worked without a strong government back, right? Are
Yeah.
folding up because the right policies are not there. It is hard to compete when virgin materials continuously are cheaper than recycled materials,
Yes.
right? So for the
Exactly.
market to work, it's important that there are the right policies in place that encourages or that continuous use of virgin materials and right now putting a replacement. So there's a need for responsibilities on the side of the producer, and sometimes producers are not going to move without government policies. So it's important right now that so these are the conversations we're having, ensuring that we bridge that knowledge and information gap between both the public and the private. While we see emergence and strong trends in the private sector in terms of the number of recyclers that we have. We see waste to energy plants springing up here and there. We see e-waste recycling facilities springing up. But most importantly, right now, we must ensure that the right policies are in line. And these are conversations we are having at the moment with financial institutions, with the private sector, and also the general populace. Conversations and platforms like this that continuously provide opportunity right now to engage the general public to stimulate this kind of conversations on the importance of, because if there is no demand side, supply side is as well useless, right? So it's
Yeah.
important that all
True.
these variables come together as we move along.
All right, thank you so much, Okpe. And let me come to you now, Bolu. Just still leeching on to a bit of what Okpe has pointed out. Now we're looking at some of the things that, I mean, of course, he said there is progress, but we're not yet where we want to be. So I just want to also get your perspective on that, Bolu. What would you say are the current bottlenecks? Okpe has spoken a bit about mindset shifts much earlier. So when it comes to the growth of secular innovations and businesses, do you think it has to do with simply mindset, the money, or even the market access, like Okpe has pointed to a bit? I just want to get your thoughts on that as well, towards looking at how we can push forward some things that seem to be holding us back.
And I think, Opa, you've described it so very well, that
Mm-hmm.
complexity that is the entire industry of where Nigeria is, where we could be, well, what we're currently doing. I think that talking about the bottlenecks goes beyond money, mindset, market access, because I think that focuses mostly on the entrepreneur consumer side and
Mm,
relationship, and then leaves the broader picture of things. So first of all, you're coming, like Opa mentioned, from a place where yes, there is the knowledge of trying to extract as much value from resources, trying to maximize what we can get from the resources as much as possible. But you then have incomplete value chains, so to speak, where we've moved from a means or way of life where everything was manufactured locally and people were really connected to the process to get to the final product and of course to regenerate those resources. So what you have now is you can't even speak of a Nigerian, so to speak, only chemical and excuse me, circular economy space or industry standing on its own, because material value chains and supply chains are now global. You're getting
mm,
a resource that has been manufactured somewhere halfway across the world. You're bringing it here, and you only have, so to speak, control as a nation over, or at least within your borders, over what you do with the material while it's in your custody, and then potentially gets shipped off again. So you see that there's the constraint of, yes, we might do what we can do here, but then you very quickly, if you're not careful, narrow down to only specific parts of the broader circular economy ecosystem, such as recycling. And yes, I'll pause here and say, yes, I am a chemical engineer. I do work for a chemicals company, and the part of the circular economy that is recycling is where people tend to focus and have a bias,
Yeah.
because it simply is one of those low hanging fruits that you
Mm-hmm.
can
Yeah.
access immediately. But then you quickly run into challenges where, if, for instance, as Nigeria, we are receiving technical materials from certain value chains and supply chains, and then we focus on recycling. One of the challenges that you run into is that you miss the bigger picture, right? And
Mm.
again, to go back to it, recycling, as an example, is not inherently sustainable.
Mm.
Caveat, because
Interesting.
it focuses on conversion. So you
Mm.
can have recycling and have it be unsustainable as one circular economy
Mm.
intervention, because it focuses on conversion, right? And the goal is to convert. And I'll give you an
Mm.
example. When entrepreneurs come to me, because with BASF, we have a portfolio of technologies. BASF is a chemical company that spans several industries. So we sort of understand what it takes to convert. We like to call it our favorite element, carbon, which is the basis of organic chemistry and
Yeah.
which is the basis of a lot of petrochemical manufacturing. So we see those value chains, right? But then when you bring that back and you try and focus on that, you then miss the other consequences, right? So
Mm.
how are you recycling? What products are you
Mm.
converting your recycled content into? Entrepreneurs will come to me and they'll say, well, I'm recycling this, or BSF, I'm recycling this and I'm making XYZ, for instance. I'm taking plastics and I want to put those plastics into building materials, and not thinking of the end of life, not thinking of the implications of these actions and these interventions. So there's something we
Mm.
call lock-in, the lock-in effect. And I think that has been one of the challenges of the linear economy, where we've built up entire economies, we've built up entire value chains on a certain way of doing things. And so you
Yes.
sort of force the system to conform to
Mm.
that. If
Yeah.
you don't think of important constraints when you're re-engineering a system, it means that at the end of the day, then you come to a point where you can't really go back, because you have investments on the ground, you have new policies that you're rolling out. And so I think that one to distill it down, we have the opportunity to leapfrog, right? Because we've seen where economies, we've seen where others have done it, we've seen where they failed. And the fact that we don't even have those value chains
Mm.
built out means that we can do it better. But there is the danger, and I see it too often, of
Mm.
uh, putting into place actions and interventions without thinking of the broader implications. But I think that some of the answer, I may have taken that in a slightly different direction, because this is a pet peeve of mine. Um, but that is potentially one of the scenarios that we're creating today that will cause problems for us in the future. Now, to add to that, other bottlenecks that we experience here is we sometimes strong voices, like Ope has noted. Now we're seeing the pathways to be able to develop policies and implement those policies. So we have strong voices, but not necessarily I like to call it connecting tissue to implement
Mm.
those policies in the correct
Yeah.
way. So it means you have a system and you're trying to move it in a certain direction, but then it's as though you do not have the impulses to control certain parts of that system. And so sometimes it's even detrimental when you move parts of the system. And not others. And so you cannot coordinate in a certain way. For instance, if we have EPR policies, how are we ensuring that they are implemented in a way that is beneficial to the whole value chain? Right. And so
Mm,
these are some of the challenges, particularly because, as Ope mentioned, Nigeria is just on its way, still on its way to
yeah.
industrialization, right? So we've not developed necessarily the connecting tissue. So these are some of the bottlenecks that are apparent at the moment. Nigerians are
Mm-hmm.
very enterprising. Nigeria as a nation, as it interacts with other nations and other economies, we're very enterprising, and we know how to get things done. But it's important that we are moving in the right direction. It's important that we are coordinating ourselves in the right ways. And so, as we are trying to solve problems, we do not end up creating new problems that we can't
Yeah.
necessarily go back from, given that
Mm.
resources are limited.
Mm. Wow, thank you so much, Poli. You raised such very interesting points, and I want to get Ope's perspective on that. I really, especially on the path of how recycling is not necessarily a sustainable option. I want to know what Ope has to say on that. Do you agree with Bolu's line of thought in that regard?
Well, it's all about perspectives, right?
Mm,
For me, I think that the idea that that we continue to consume at the rate at which we are consuming, and with the mindset of thinking that recycling would automatically solve all the problems. In that context, yes, I do not think recycling will solve all the problems. We also have a consumption problem both from a Nigeria and global perspective. There's a consumption problem. Take the fashion industry, for example, right? And the tons and millions of tons of fabrics, of waste fabrics that ends up in the landfill without any following recycling. I mean, I think just about maybe less than 1%. Now, take Europe, for example. Less than 1% of disposed fabrics are recycled in Europe. Just to think about that. The bulk
mm,
of it right now ends up as secondhand products in the global south. The rest of them probably
yeah,
ending up in
that's true.
landfills of some sort. So we know for sure that recycling blanket option to solve all the problems of the amount of waste that we're producing is definitely not the answer. However, to a certain degree, right, recycling in such a way that we also know that we cannot totally eliminate consumption, but I think that recycling, in such a way, in recycling that is demand driven, where it closes
Mm,
the loop and there's an opportunity right now to bring it back into as a factor of production continue to be one of the solutions, right? But it
mm.
cannot be, the way we look at this is that it's a multi-layered problem and multi-layered solutions also have to apply. With recycling being one of the solutions as opposed to being the silver bullet. I think that that's the way I would look at the opportunities that recycling offers.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Okwe. And I want to talk now a bit on the recent scoping mission that CEIP had. I know that a few months ago, your team embarked on, that scoping mission through, I think, across 5 states, and then including the FCT as well. So first of all, let's get into the reason behind this scoping mission, and what was newly awakened in you? I know you had a lot of interactions with various businesses, you saw different innovations and various organizations. So I want to know, how has this awakened a new understanding of what is really going on in communities, how people are seeing circular economy, either positively or negatively? What has this newly awakened in you, this last scoping mission that you had? Just a bit on that.
Well, it's so interesting, right? So to provide a bit of a background, I was, after the launch of the Nigeria Circular Economy Roadmap last year by the Honorable Minister for Environment, so we felt, our principle or the Dutch principle that, from, how this has worked both in the Netherlands and across the world, where we see secular economy take shape, is that the private sector must lead vision, because that's where they say the proof is in the pudding, right? So the private sector is the evidence of whatever policy work in which you are doing to show way forward in circular economy, or that it is successful. So we felt we needed to get the show on the road, right? To look at what was obtainable in Nigeria, across the sub-regional levels. Sometimes when you sit in Lagos or Abuja, you do not have a proper understanding of what is obtainable. So we felt, let's get our hands dirty. We went to about 6 states, like you mentioned, 5 states, including the FCT, of course, and Lagos, to look at, meet with the public, private, and the social sector players. For me, it was really a eye-opening experience, and just also reflecting the uneven nature of everything. Right, you get stage, you get a very active public sector. The government has the right kind of people in office who understand the opportunities in the sector to unlock your sustainable capital, climate finance, the kind of investments, new frontiers of investments that will propel that sector forward, and you then see a private sector, also, meeting them, at the required par. And in some states you get there right now, you see a public sector that is not consistent, perhaps, at sub-regional levels, just not showing the kind of workings we would typically like to see. So it was, eye-opening for me, and, for us to understand how sometimes we all would not move at the same level. And also, the idea was also to help us know how to support each state, and meet them where they are, as opposed to designing a blanket intervention or a blanket program that will catalyze the circular economy space. Now, both Circular Economy Innovation Partnership and the Circular Business Platform are ecosystem building institutions with a mandate to look at how do we build the circular economy ecosystem in Nigeria, because it is based on the idea that when the ecosystem wins, entrepreneurs thrive, right? As opposed to deciding to support the entrepreneurs or say, oh, it's access to finance, you provide access to finance, but just 2 steps on the road, they meet a bottleneck of policy, So the idea is, how do we take an ecosystem approach in advancing this course? So it was very interesting for me to also see the resilience and the innovation of entrepreneurs, the young innovators that we met across the states, who, against all odds, with little support either from government or access to finance, are able to still show resilience, right? That was so impressive to see, the emergence of, these entrepreneurs doing interesting work, either from recycling to waste to energy, or in the bioeconomy side, or the food waste side. It was so interesting. One of the entrepreneurs I recall visiting was Monia in Ibadan, who was turning cassava peels into animal feeds. I think such ingenuity needs to be supported, right? How do we scale such opportunity? Because we continuously see how how animal feed is continuously on the increase, with a lot of imports, a lot of this feed is being imported. Now he's come up with a solution where 60% of this feed now are from cassava peel. They are cheaper and also more sustainable, and the animals also like them. So it's, and there's evidence to show. So for us, it's like, okay, this is the kind of innovation we like to see, right? That ensures that even within the agricultural space, we are closing the loop. There is a lot of waste in the agricultural sector, and within that waste also is a lot of opportunities. So for us, that was an eye opener where the public sector was in terms of domestication of the innovation, or of the roadmap, or specific interventions on policy. Secondly, was to also take an assessment of where the ecosystem was as far as entrepreneurship. What are the low hanging fruits? Different states have different low hanging fruits as far as entrepreneurship was concerned. So he allowed us take stock of where the entrepreneurs are, where the is, and from a more broader perspective, the elephant in the room on access to finance. How do we support these entrepreneurs who need to scale the kind of capital that they require, which we find already that the commercial system structure, the brick and mortar financial system, does not support the kind of enterprises we see emerging within the circular economy space. So it's put us in a position to know how to intervene, the kind of disruption or advisory or support, policy support we can give to enable the ecosystem to grow. The Circular Economy Innovation Exchange to the Netherlands, which we just came back from some weeks ago, where we took some of these entrepreneurs we met together with the public sector stakeholders, some commissioners for environment, special advisor, this, that, as well as entrepreneurs doing amazing work states to the Netherlands, rooted in the idea that, why there is ingenuity, local ingenuity that we see, also then look at how do we then look at the potential collaboration, cross-border collaboration, be it
Mm-hmm.
innovation transfer, be it financial support, to catalyze bilateral opportunities. And we're encouraging not just us, but as many development partners or missions in Nigeria to also take cue from this. And we're so happy about some of the outcomes that we already see on the mission. And one of the Nigerian organizations who attended Free Recycle entered into an MOU with a Dutch company called Free Desperate to establish the first aerosol recycling facility in Nigeria. Which
Hmm.
is by aerosol, you mean the
Interesting.
cans, the sprays, those insecticides
Hmm.
to establish it. And we're looking about a $10 million investment here. So
Hmm.
for us, for this kind of partnerships, right? While without undermining the capacity of what entrepreneurs in Nigeria here are doing. In fact, the exchange was structured in such a way that it was a session where the Nigerian entrepreneurs had the opportunity to share their own innovation, what was working in Nigeria, how they've done it so far. And the Dutch side also had the opportunity to say, hey, this is what we're doing. This idea, so it really provided, that real opportunity for an exchange of ideas. And we believe that through this kind of conversation, stirring this kind of conversations, we see partnerships begin to emerge on the horizon on, either from the agri side or, the waste management side. So these are some of the things that,
Yeah.
I like to us is,
Mm-hmm.
supporting the private sector to lead. I would also like to highlight one of the partnerships that we've seen, which is energy partnership between the Lagos State government and a company called Harvest Waste. I mean, we all know, Lagos State generates about 13,000 tons of waste on a daily basis. Through this partnership, it materializing, we're looking at how 2,500 to 3,000 tons of this generated in Lagos is being used to generate electricity to power about 40,000 homes, right? With
Hmm.
huge,
Wow.
significant
Yeah.
investment coming into Nigeria for this.
Hmm.
They were looking to catalyze, show the example of possibility, but also without ignoring the SMEs, the SMEs, the small medium scale enterprises right now who are also
Enterprises.
in that
Yeah.
space, who are either looking to connect markets. One of the things we saw in one of the companies we saw in Oyo State as well was actually exporting the bulk of their plastics to Norway, to as far as Norway.
Hmm.
They were, compressing, a certain type of plastics, and it had significant export value. So we're already seeing these transactions take place.
Yeah.
Just yesterday I was watching a documentary of how Sweden, right now at the moment, is importing waste from across the world because their facilities even unable to. I mean, they are recycling complex. They're not generating enough waste to feed into their own establishment. So they are exporting waste. There's nothing stopping Nigeria from taking advantage of these opportunities,
Yeah.
and really then turning waste into wealth,
Hmm.
to again.
Wow, thank you so much, Okwe. That was quite enlightening and exciting as well. Really exciting to hear that these are the opportunities that we have. And let me finally come to Bolu before we wrap up the program. From everything that we have said and then you all have seen in your field, are you hopeful that, or how hopeful are you that Nigeria, in specific terms, can achieve the circular economy goals that we have placed for ourselves? I mean, speaking on the fact that we have launched the circular economy roadmap and all of that, how hopeful are you that these can be achieved within a short, or let me not say within a short period of time? Definitely, I think we still have a long way to go. So, but how soon do you think we can get there to, see these things we want to see, especially in this, in the different businesses, these SMEs that Okwe has mentioned, and of course in the general landscape of the Nigerian economy?
You're not going to catch me putting a timeline to that, so I'm not going to do that. But
No, it's
really, the way
fine.
what Okwe has said is so true. I mean, there's so many opportunities that have been
Mm-hmm.
identified to create value, and the circular economy really is a lever for growth. It
Yeah.
could address a lot of the challenges that we even have not been able to address with industrialization or on the path to industrialization that we're taking. But I think that that Nigerian resilience is very important that we have, and it will
Mm.
help us to get on
Yeah.
that path and to continue to make progress. But it's also is so important that on that path we're able to have the right tooling, right? Develop the
Mm.
right forms of capabilities and capacities. And just along the lines of what Okwe has described, is that ecosystem of tools and access to information, right? Access to markets and those sorts of things. And at least on the BSF side, what BSF has done is to sort of set up that toolbox. Say, if you are looking for technology, particularly in chemical manufacturing, to support the circular economy, to develop new material cycles, new business models, this portfolio or this toolbox expands your capabilities. So you're no longer limited to what you have access to. And some of those are really innovative. For instance, I'm just taking a cue from um, on agriculture, that agriculture thread that described. In
Yeah.
East Africa, there is a business model where you have the earnings from the business coming from increase in gain. So, for instance, I'm mentioning this specifically because um, sometimes there's the perception that to continue to drive growth, we need to drive continuous material production, and it needs to be more and not less. But you can drive growth and have it be less and not more. In this specific business model example, you have um, BSF setting up increases in efficiency, right? So you're buying less chemicals, but you're doing more, you're gaining more from, and it basically is the same business model as using technology to expand what we can do. So it's important that we tap into those opportunities, some of
Yeah.
those which Ope has also described, that everyone works together. We'll get there faster,
Mm.
we'll go even much further if we all work together, right? As
Mm.
opposed to working in silos. So, no, I will not put a timeline to that, but yes, I will say that we are
Mm.
building momentum and there are resources, right? And some of which Ope has mentioned, some of which BSF has, that really can empower the Nigerian ecosystem, the Nigerian entrepreneurs, the policymakers to be able to piggyback off what we have and move forward as opposed to going the longer route.
All right. Thank you so much, Bolu. It's been a pleasure to have you join us on the program. And let me finally also hear from Okpe as well before we draw the curtains on today's program. So, Okpe, of course, from all that we have said and all that you have seen so far, how optimistic are you that we're going to get to where we want to be in terms of secular economy development in Nigeria?
So I would follow Bolu's line as well. I think that circular economy space is one that, no matter how well intentioned you are, wherever side you are sitting, either from a policy side, an investment side, regulatory side, or entrepreneurial side, or even it is one that no one person can sit down in their own space and decide to say, hey, it's the only space that we know that we all this. And it's so critical and delicate that if one of these stakeholders that I try to highlight, decides to do the wrong thing, it affects everybody else, right? So
Mm.
it is a very intertwined system, if you would
Yeah.
work. And we've seen
Yeah.
that even by the failures in Europe, right? Even the most civilized societies, we're seeing some failures happen there just because all of
Mm.
these ingredients, all of these are not aligning. Now, one
Yeah.
of the examples, right, seeing a trend now across the world, either in America or even the breeze blowing across Europe, where there is less mention, less prioritization on issues that relates to the Paris Agreement and the opportunities in green and sustainable finance. We've seen America deprioritize that. We're seeing that deprioritization as well in Europe. That has
Mm-hmm.
implication as well for Africa, right? Because it limits the kind of investment we're seeing in that. It is impeding the kind of momentum we thought we were on. So I would say that the opportunities are endless. United Nations economy sector investment wise was 3 trillion, 3 trillion,
Mm.
right? So we
Wow.
know that these potentials are there. However, for it
Yeah.
to realize, a lot of things have to align. A whole lot have to align. So I would say that there is clear opportunity, and for us policymakers, advocates like yourself who are on the media platform, who are able to access regulators through the media, or investors or entrepreneurs, I think we must continuously draw the message in, especially on the side of the people, or maybe they just don't understand it, or they just can't correlate. But I think for us
Yeah.
as Africans or as Nigerians, the opportunity offers to the poverty to create new opportunities. And I think that is where we sit, in terms of how do we mobilize additional capital, to advance this cause? How do we take advantage of this floating green capital, green finance, sustainable capital floating across the world? How does Nigeria take advantage? How do we position our entrepreneurs to be able to take advantage of this global conversation? If not, we end up losing out. So I think that I would say that it's a lot of opportunity, but it's such that the right decisions have to be made for us to harness it. So it's that I'll end with the Ubuntu principle, right? Circular economy requires Ubuntu. It's a collective movement for it to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Okwe, and also to Bolu, to my wonderful guest. I don't know about you, but that was quite an eye-opening conversation for me. So, if today's episode has shown us anything, it's that the circular economy is, of course, all about the decisions that we also make. So, a big thank you to our partners at the CEIP for sharing their insight, and also to Bolu as well, for the incredible work that they continue to do in pushing this journey forward. That's a wrap on today's episode of The Circle. Many thanks for watching. I'm Tony Ogubanjo. It's bye for now.